Good morning. Pleased to be joined with Vice Chair Ted Lieu today. House Republicans over the past 2 weeks have been on the defensive. The American people are outraged that House Republicans voted to cut Medicaid, to take food off of the tables of working families, and to roll back 100,000 manufacturing jobs, lay off thousands of first responders, and eliminate 108,000 public school teachers teaching jobs. I'll let the vice chair speak to the veterans' healthcare cuts in a moment. We're here today with a warning for Senate Republicans, because once again, it appears that folks on the other side of the Capitol are underestimating how reckless and extreme this group of House Republicans is. But think back to the omnibus fight just last December. House Republicans walked away from the negotiating table and showed us they are not just unwilling, they are unable to govern. America narrowly avoided a Republican-led government shutdown only because the Senate decided to join House Democrats to do the right thing. Then Leader McCarthy could not be seen supporting the omnibus because he needed the Freedom Caucus votes to become Speaker. Nothing has only changed. In fact, his position has only hardened. Senate Republicans are putting their heads in the sand if they think that the extremists within their party will have a change of heart. If Kevin McCarthy is forced to choose between holding power in his speakership or taking us closer to default, we know he's going to choose default. The American people know that as well. House Republicans are on a path toward default. The question before us is, will the Senate Republicans take the wheel? Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. I previously served on active duty in the United States military for a little over 4 years and then stayed in the reserves for an additional 21 years. These cuts in the Republicans' Default on America Act will be devastating to veterans. 22% cuts in the bill mean up to 30 million fewer visits by veterans to the VA, stopping of VA construction projects, longer wait times for veterans. And what you see now are Republicans who voted for it and then regret that they voted for this bill because now they understand how devastating these cuts to veterans are. And now they're claiming somehow this bill won't cut funding to veterans, and they're lying. And how do we know that? Math. So veterans groups said, please exempt VA from your bill, and they refused to. And that's why numerous veterans groups, such as Disabled American Veterans, the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, and so many others opposed this bill. And the reason Republicans did not exempt veterans from these cuts is because if you don't cut defense and you don't cut veterans, then to make their numbers work, you have to cut the rest of government 33% to 50%. They know that's unworkable. They know they have to cut veterans in the bill based on the top line numbers that they wrote into the bill. Also, Section 201 specifically just removes billions of dollars of funding from the VA. So there's also that. So it's very clear this bill makes cuts to veterans funding, and it's going to be devastating to veterans. And that's why you see a number of Republicans now trying to somehow say that the bill doesn't say what it says. Well, it does. In addition, there's math as well. So with that, happy to answer any questions you may have. And Chairman Aguilar said he's going to take the hard questions.
Nicole.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. On George Santos, I mean, obviously the charges were just unsealed this morning. More Republicans appear to be calling on him to resign. Has there been any further talk of potentially putting forth some type of privileged resolution to expel the congressman?
I know that there have been items that have been offered by legislators on our side in the past. We're going to wait to see how this plays out. There is one person who can make this change, Speaker McCarthy. And I think that's going to be the interesting point here. George Santos was the deciding vote on the Default on America Act. And he loved the drama behind it. He loved walking down the middle of the aisle, holding his card up, and being vote number 217 to deliver that piece of legislation that would cut veterans and cut so many important programs. That is the Kevin McCarthy coalition. George Santos speaks to the Kevin McCarthy coalition. So I don't know what Speaker McCarthy is going to do, or what House Republicans are going to do. We're digesting the charging documents, but the level of fraud, the level of extremism, the continued lies throughout all of this. These are things that we've known. But clearly the DOJ has been working on this now. It's just an unfortunate thing that that we're all colleagues together, and this level of fraud that's been perpetrated on the people of New York. But this is at the hands of Kevin McCarthy. But we're going to keep our options open and see where we go from here. Vice Chair, anything on that?
Sure. The Republican member of Congress, purportedly known as George Santos, is entitled to the presumption of innocence, just like anyone else in America, in a criminal court of law. The House is not a criminal court of law. The House has its own rules. The House can choose to expel a member. Robert Garcia has put forward a bill to do that. If Speaker McCarthy were to put that bill on the floor, then I would vote for it.
Nick?
When the border bill comes up, I believe tomorrow, do you expect all Democrats to oppose it?
We'll see. And you tell me what the final construct of the border bill is. In the dark of night, they made more changes. I haven't seen every single change that they have made to this bill. You guys are reporting that there could be more changes. So you tell me what the final language is, and I'll give you a whip update from Democratic Whip Catherine Clark. But we don't know what that final construct is. I think what's important here, too, is going back to the Default on America Act. Republicans, own the cuts to Customs and Border Patrol related to that bill. Their bill would have cut 2,400 Border Patrol agents. So now this piece of legislation says we're going to plus up the border. We're going to add law enforcement officers at the border. Your bill 2 weeks ago did the opposite. And so we're, color us confused here. But that's, I think, where we're at. I mean, in addition to, expanding child detention and doing so many terrible things, eliminating our asylum process that would likely have impacts to Ukrainian refugees as well. There is so much terrible policy in this bill. But I'm just a little confused that they want to cut Border Patrol agents 2 weeks ago and now add them back. So I don't know what their strategy is on this. Max?
On the debt limit, you mentioned you want Senate Republicans to take the wheel here, to kind of step up. We just saw over the weekend, 43 of them signed this letter saying no clean debt limit hike. How do you reconcile that fact with what you're calling for?
All I'm saying is, we need some rational leadership here, and I'm just pointing out the obvious that I don't think House Republicans are have that gear, and so I think that it's important for Senate Republicans not to leave the game here. But look, highlighting the fact, 3 of the 4 legislative leaders ruled out default. There's only one that didn't rule out default yesterday. And he sits in the Speaker's office. So I think that's incredibly troubling. And I think Senate Republicans should just take note and make sure that as we get closer to this potential default that will have dramatic impact to the American people, raising costs that they'll have to pay, increasing interest rates, tanking the economy, creating more joblessness, potentially 700,000 jobs, according to Moody's. I mean, those are real factors, and I just hope that Senate Republicans don't take their eye off that ball. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Chairman. Liam Cosgrove with Epic Times. When you consider the fact that we're in a situation where we are unable to pay our bills without borrowing more money, is that not inherently concerning to you? If it were a private individual and it was like, I got to take more credit card debt to pay my previous debt, that's someone who's living underwater, paycheck to paycheck. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's incredibly important conversation, here in Washington, D.C. to talk about spending, to talk about debts and deficits. We do that here every year when we have budget resolutions, and as a member of the Appropriations Committee, when we mark up 12 spending bills each and every year. We've done that in a bipartisan way. Oh, by the way, the last 2 years under Democratic control, we increased in a bipartisan way the budget for Customs and Border Patrol. We've done that in a significant manner to protect the American public. So while Republicans want to continue to support the Default on America Act that would make dramatic cuts to FBI funding, Customs and Border Patrol funding, that's not who we are. The American public understands that we cannot get close to default. America has never defaulted on our obligations. We cannot do that. And I think it's accurate that 3 legislative leaders have said that we cannot get there. Unfortunately, there's one that has not said that, and that's the troubling part of where we are in our today.
So let me just take your analogy, right? What does a normal American family do? So let's say you have a car loan. You don't just sort of say, oh, I'm just not going to pay the car loan because I have to cut my spending sometime in the future. Bad things happen if you don't pay your car loan. Eventually, they're going to take the car, repossess it, right? So the notion that we're just not going to pay our bills and then somehow talk about spending in the future, that's insane. We just have to pay our bills because also it's in the Constitution.
But to further that analogy, that family might say, I have to cut back, I have to buy, retail brand of some food that I like, cut expenses wherever you can so that I can pay back that car loan and I don't default on it, my credit doesn't go down. A normal family has to cut expenses. And that's what we're discussing here are severe cuts that need to happen so that we can pay back our debts without taking on immensely more debt.
Right. But you don't not pay the car loan, right? That all Democrats are saying is pay the bills. And then we're happy to talk about we're happy to, but why does that be cuts? The reason we're here, let's make this simple. Republicans did this massive tax giveaway to millionaires and the rich, and they don't want to pay for it. So why does that be cuts? Why can't it be revenues? Joe Biden put out a plan. It's going to reduce the deficit by $3 trillion. It's a mix of cuts and revenues. So the entire framing you have is wrong. Why just focus on cuts? Why not on revenues? We should focus on both.
Mr. Aguilar. Sure. Good morning, thank you. So the president yesterday, we've heard your side talk about potential cuts to the VA, potential cuts to the Meals on Wheels and things. Later, he was like, well, I'm not sure they even know what those cuts are. As you know, we're operating right now on an appropriations bill. Mr. Lieu, you said this is about the math. Everybody knows that that bill that they passed the other day is not going anywhere. It's not a budget, but it's not binding. So it doesn't seem that everything is square here when we talk about those cuts. Are those cuts that you guys talk about with the VA, that's not real money right now because it's not in an appropriations bill in the fall. We're funded through the 30th of September.
Sure. And if they put out a budget resolution that spells out exactly what they would cut, we would have more clarity. All we have now on the clarity of Republican priorities is the Default on America Act, which says that they are going to go back to FY22 levels. And you've got kids crying in the hallway because of this, Chad. Like no, that happens occasionally too. No, they're clearly everyone is upset about this Republican budget. And so, if they produced a Republican budget that then guided the 12 appropriations bills, then we could have a more substantive conversation. In the absence of that, all we have to go on is the Default on America Act, which will now serve as the framework by which all of these House Republicans should be judged. And the metrics within there, the math within that says clearly, and we know this because they went into the dark of night, Chad, to get the votes. You know this, you reported this, to save biofuels tax credits. Why couldn't they also save veterans funding is a part of that? If they wanted to make something a priority to get the votes, they could have done that. They chose not to. Go ahead. It isn't.
Not real ammo that you would fire.
No, it isn't. And we would expect them to deem some numbers, eventually here too, as you know. But we are in this period where they have not deemed a budget. They have not marked up appropriations bills. They have not set a top line. And so the Default on America Act is the metric by which we know their priorities. Back. Go ahead.
On the border bill, do you see any potential areas of compromise, overhauling asylum, border funding, that could be part of any kind of bipartisan deal? And if so, in the climate in the House, do you see that moving forward anytime soon?
We want a safe and orderly border. That's what House Democrats support. We want to work with the Biden administration to make sure that they have the resources to ensure that that happens. That doesn't mean you completely gut asylum. That doesn't mean that you build a medieval wall and waste taxpayers' money. It does not mean you put kids in detention for unlimited amounts of time, violating court orders and violating humanitarian standards and decency. That's not what you mean. Now, you want to have conversations in the Homeland Security Appropriations Committee or in the Homeland Committee, full committee. We're happy to do that. As someone who worked with Republicans in the past on DACA reform and border security, there are a lot of things that we agree with. Broader use of technology to make sure that we have operational control. I mean, those are the types of things we can talk about. But this bill right now, and it's only getting worse. To get the votes that they need, this bill is only getting more extreme.
Chairman, I just wanted to ask, earlier this morning, Homer and members of the Oversight Committee tried to explain a memo where they say that the Biden family has received money from countries, including China, Romania, in exchange for policy decisions or policy peddling here in the U.S. They say they're working up legislation to try to ensure financial transparency from the president and vice president. Does the Democrat caucus think that a bill like that is needed to ensure financial transparency from the upper levels of government?
It's hard with a straight face to look at anything that the Oversight Committee is doing without a healthy layer of skepticism. They seem more intent on stoking conspiracy theories than anything else. We believe in transparency. We believe in accountability. That should also, by the way, apply to transparency and openness at the Supreme Court. But that doesn't seem to be anything that House Republicans are looking at right now. So color us a little skeptical in the back.
Yes. Speaker McCarthy last night announced that he was canceling an event reservation for Representative Tlaib for a pro-Palestinian event. Is that something that you all as the Democratic leadership see as appropriate, or are you doing anything in response?
You know, it's unfortunate. This place, the majority controls a lot of, meeting rooms. But people should be allowed to meet, to congregate, to have discussions, to express their viewpoints and ideas. That's who we are. But unfortunately, if the majority controls office space and they want to revoke a group or organization, sometimes they have that ability to do that. And we'll work with individuals within the caucus to make sure that they have an opportunity to be heard.
President Biden told reporters yesterday that the administration has done everything they could to get ready for Title 42 to expire tomorrow. Are you comfortable with the plan that the administration has put forward? And are you looking to do more to provide resources for the administration to deal with any surge that may happen once Title 42 expires?
Look, it's unfortunate that House Republicans don't join hands and embrace comprehensive immigration reform. That would be, a critical piece of this conversation. Linda Sanchez is going to unveil the U.S. Citizenship Act, that is the House Democratic version for comprehensive immigration reform that has the support of the Biden administration. That will serve as our starting point in conversations and negotiations. We're monitoring what is happening at the border, obviously, and looking at the current conditions. We heard reports on that from ranking members this morning. We're going to continue to work with the administration, on this. It's not anything that is going away in the short term, and so we're very mindful of that. The resources that they need, and making sure that we treat people with decency and that it's done in an orderly way.
Last question.
Another mass shooting over the weekend. We understand that was a topic of discussion in the caucus this morning. You don't control the floor. Is there a strategy that you landed on to put pressure on Republicans to do something?
I think we're going to continue to have conversations about that topic because it's not going away. We passed meaningful gun safety legislation in a bipartisan way last Congress. Unfortunately, it was as much as we could do. A lot of House Democrats, the vice chair and I, subscribed to efforts that would go further. We hope that those opportunities exist to have debate and to vote on those issues, assault weapons ban and continued resources and policy changes. We also know very clearly that the Supreme Court It was mentioned to us today, has something on the shadow docket that would affect assault weapons as well, potentially prohibiting assault weapons bans. Those are difficult, and I don't think you can count on House Democrats to be quiet about gun safety in this issue. We asked Fred Gutenberg to come to caucus, the vice chair and I, this morning. We did that before the events of this weekend. But we did it with an eye that events like that this weekend would continue to happen. Fred's someone who has the respect of our caucus and speaks passionately about this, not just from the perspective of losing his daughter in a school shooting, but to make meaningful policy changes, and how we capture data to talk about this and where the American public are. So he's someone who's a thought leader, and we respect him and what he's been through. And so we're not going to be quiet on this. We're going to continue to talk about the next steps, and we'll share those with you as we develop them. Thank you so much. Do you have anything
No,
on?
I'm good.
Thank you.